Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I'm dressed in drag today as an act of solidarity.
Pride allies stand up amid threats that forced a drag show to be cancelled in Victoria. Also,
these are animals, sentient beings that, feel and have the want to live as well, too.
BC horse rescuers are feeling the strain as more of the animals are put up for auction. And January. Why does it happen? Johanna will tell us.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Anita is away tonight. Threats of violence has forced organizers to cancel monthly family-focused drag shows in Victoria. While the event has been held for 3 years, the threats are new and they're not isolated to the island. As Eva Gwen-Senge reports, organizers say it shows why Pride events are needed as they beef up security.
I'm dressed in drag today as an act of solidarity and as a member of the queer community.
A show of support Friday afternoon from the Mayor of Victoria, hoping to condemn intolerance and reassure the LGBTQ community.
These threats of violence have no place in our community. Pride Month is about celebrating love.
Happy Pride! A family-friendly drag show this weekend was canceled. Last week, employees received increasingly threatening phone calls.
The caller said that someone should come to the event and shoot up the cafe and everyone in it.
The show has been held monthly at a local cafe for the past 3 years. This is the first time it's faced threats.
It's always been extremely positive. We've had families in attendance that have expressed, how important it's been to them.
Victoria Police have launched an investigation. Police say a Pride event in Surrey is also facing potential backlash. Pride organizers say, sadly, this is nothing new.
We always hope for the best, but kind of plan for the worst, and threats of violence against the 2S LGBTQAI+ community are unfortunately not isolated incidents. This is something we've always been dealing with.
Still, in spite of the threats, organizers say security is being taken care of for upcoming Pride events.
So we have things in place for everyone to feel safe, and these events are not stopping. And we hope everyone comes out and support as an ally, as members of the communities.
They expect Pride parades to be as well attended as ever after 2 years of the pandemic. Eva Gwen-Senge, CBC News, Vancouver.
Inflation is impacting just about everything from groceries to gas, rent to entertainment. Also hard hit, horse owners. One rescue rancher says they're under more pressure as more animals go up for auction. And as Ali Patarge reports, they say they don't have much help to save them.
This is Jet.
Jet was a 2.5-year-old colt when he was spared from the slaughterhouse.
They would have already been packaged and frozen and probably already eaten by somebody over in Europe right now.
Jet is trotting around Second Chance Cheek Eye Ranch in Squamish with an injury on his hind leg.
That's probably one of the reasons why he was put in the auction. He didn't fit the mold.
He's one of about 100 horses rescued by the ranch, and Chris Latham says she can't take any more.
A lot of people are under the stress of, high feed prices, so they can't afford to keep their horses, and they're sending them to auction.
Latham says horse owners are struggling with the rising cost of feed, gas, and a growing shortage of equestrian land. But she also says the influx is partly due to irresponsible breeding.
And I'm not saying that all breeders are bad, that's for sure, but there are a lot out there that just throw stallions out in the middle of a herd, let the mares get pregnant.
And it's getting worse and worse and worse.
Horse advocates say they're getting more calls from people who can't afford to keep their horses and are asking breeders to slow down.
We try to help people with referrals. Sometimes we can find a place for them, but it's getting now to the point where we don't know what to say to these people anymore.
Like Jet, many horses at Second Cheek Eye are considered too young to retire. And Latham wants to raise awareness about what it takes to own and care for horses.
It doesn't, matter whether or not it's a dog, it's a cat, it's a horse, our pets, and these are animals, sentient beings that, feel and have the want to live as well, too.
In the meantime, the horse rescue continues to care for horses like Jet, giving them second chances in the hopes of eventually finding them greener pastures. Ali Pitarga, CBC News, Brackendale.
The BC Centre for Disease Control has confirmed a second case of monkeypox in BC. This second is in Vancouver Coastal Health Region, the same as the first case. Officials say the two are not connected, but both are related to travel. There are now 168 confirmed cases of the disease in Canada. Monkeypox typically spreads through close bodily contact with an infected person or from exposure to contaminated objects like bedsheets. We have an update for you on the lockdown at Killarney Secondary School yesterday. Vancouver police say a reported axe was actually a prop for a school project, not a real weapon. Still, the school was put on lockdown for 2 hours yesterday as investigators did a room-by-room search. On Wednesday, 20 students were affected by a bear spray attack. That also forced the evacuation of the entire school. The continuing shortage of specialized baby formulas has prompted BC officials to ask pharmacies to put the products behind the counter. The new guidelines are aimed at helping pharmacies preserve supply during a temporary shortage in hypoallergenic formulas. The product is for babies with certain allergies and medical conditions. Families will be allowed up to a 2-week supply at any one time, but Health Minister Adrian Dix is trying to reassure parents.
Well, there's no shortage of regular infant formula in BC, and we've heard about that elsewhere in the world, but there's no shortage of that in BC. There is a shortage of certain hypoallergenic formulas, so specialized formulas that are used by about 1.5 to 2% for about 1.5 to 2% of babies.
Canadian markets have not been impacted by the United States baby formula shortage. A family in East Vancouver had their Father's Day plans wrecked after someone stole a boat they built from the keel up. Take a look. Duncan McDonald and his family plan to hit the water in this 14-foot boat this weekend. He started building the vessel last year, and it became a family affair as his wife and 2 young daughters chipped in. But a day after they finished, they woke up and say they was gone, stolen on its trailer near Fraser and King Ed. The young girls had christened the flat-bottom skiff Sailor Do That. They've put out a plea for help on Facebook.
So sad, could not even talk about it or text about it without tearing up, but the amount of response from, like I said, the community has really given me hope.
It's lovely to see the conclusion of the story of putting it in water and seeing how that goes.
McDonald says, well, they've lost the boat. They still plan to celebrate this weekend with some camping. 2 graffiti artists have teamed up to paint a new mural in Chinatown to help lift local spirits. The murals were painted on the rolling shutter inside of a barbershop in the historic neighborhood whose storefront had been vandalized. In recent months, murals have popped up around Chinatown as part of a growing effort to revitalize the area. It comes amid mounting concerns around increased vandalism and petty crime. We're now less than 4 months until local elections across BC. Today, we're going to take a look at the race shaping up in the 8th largest municipality in this province, the township of Langley, where, as Justin McElroy shows us, there will be a change of leadership one way or another.
You head to the township of Langley, you see developments all over the place. It is one of the fastest growing municipalities in Metro Vancouver and all of British Columbia. And while most people are homeowners, it's not single detached homes that dominate nearly as much anymore. More people living in row houses, townhouses, and some of these developments which you saw behind. Now, 4 years ago, it was Jack Froese who easily won a 3rd term as the mayor of the township of Langley. But he's not running again, leaving it wide open for 2 councillors, Eric Woodward and Blair Whitmarsh, to enter the field. Now, they both agree that a big issue for the township is how to deal with infrastructure problems and how to make sure that as people come here, there's the services they need. What they disagree on is how important the role of a collaborative council matters.
With all the challenges we're facing, we do need a council that's very collaborative, that agrees to work together to solve these problems. There's lots of different perspectives out there, but we need to work together. So we need a council that can work together, and we need a leader that is collaborative.
actually have worked together to get a number of ideas done, such as the Aldergrove Community Amenity Fund, such as the Workup Roads program. There's been a number of elements through. The track record that I have on council is 10 pages long. Blair's is maybe 2 lines. And I think that that's the issue. And of course, he's going to want to pitch collaboration. But if you don't have any ideas, there's nothing to collaborate on.
One candidate certainly willing to get his elbows a little bit sharp. You might have noticed in that past graphic, voter turnout just 30% last election. In times when an incumbent is running and they're popular, like Froese generally was, it means lots of voters don't get out. But this time around, with 2 popular candidates, with 2 very different styles of communications, could go a lot higher. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Township of Langley.
More rivers are spilling their banks and weather conditions remain unstable across BC in this cool, wet June. As the CBC's Zara Premji explains, it has experts warning people to beware of flood dangers for weeks to come.
Unpredictability has been the key word for June's weather so far.
We really do need to get through these next couple of weeks.
While forecasters say it's difficult to predict what's coming next, one thing is certain.
This is the time of year when the province is exposed to increased risks as that snowpack that's built up over the mountains melts off.
A snowpack that's double the normal size right now. Campbell says the delay in melt could mean a continued risk of flooding into July.
So really this is going to be the period where we have increased vulnerability around the province, particularly in the bigger rivers draining from the higher terrain.
While no large evacuation orders have been issued yet, flood watches, alerts, and high stream flow advisories remain in place in many parts of the province.
Now we're in a very unstable atmosphere. We're getting thunderstorms, we're getting bigger cold low systems come through, and it's going to be a fine balance between getting enough moisture to keep wildfires at bay at least until early July, and not too much moisture, of course, to keep the spring melt and the freshet more reasonable.
People living near Okanagan Lake are being warned to prepare for potential flooding, with the Central Okanagan Regional District saying water levels in the lake are full. And search and rescue efforts for a missing 31-year-old Kelowna woman remain on pause, according to RCMP, as rescuers wait for swollen riverbanks to ease. Until the weather calms, there's no plans to go into Mission Creek. Now, while the current flood season may not be reminiscent of last November, experts warn don't get too comfortable. Instead, stay prepared. Steer clear of high water, slippery mountains, and unstable paths. Zara Premji, CBC News, North Vancouver.
Still with the weather and climate change, summer officially begins next week, but you might not know it with the cold, wet spring we've had. A rainy June in BC is not uncommon, as we know, though we call it January for a reason. So why does this happen? Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaff gets to the soggy bottom of this sometimes mopey month.
It's the middle of June, but you wouldn't know it with all this cold and rain. Welcome to January. It's a thing we love to say, but loathe to go through when hints of sunshine and warm temperatures in early spring are replaced with a month of low cloud and rain right across BC. This may be no surprise, but January is not an official meteorological term, but it is what happens when low pressure systems can end up stalling out over the west coast. Low pressure means air can rise and form clouds and rain. Ideally, these systems ride the jet stream right across the Rockies, so only lasting for a few days at a time. But June can mean a more stuck weather pattern if there are other factors at play like La Nina. So these low pressure systems end up swirling overhead, bringing extended periods of cloud, cooler temperatures, and rain. By the time we hit July, a high pressure forms off our coast and hangs out for the rest of the summer. High pressure usually means blue skies and warm temperatures. And you know what hangs off our coast in January, one of our wettest months? A low pressure. And that's why we got really clever and called June January whenever we see one of these sneaky lows hanging around. The good news? January often means a delayed start to wildfire and drought season. So if the premature start to summer has you feeling glum, know that the wait might be worth it.
Gloomy little cloud there.
Kind of cute, though.
It is, yeah. Well, we might get complaints about it, but yeah, there you go. And
just helping to explain.
Exactly. That's what we like to do here.
She's not even here, and she's helping us all out.
I know, it's a bit much, actually. A bit of an overachiever, as we know. But
Settle
thankfully,
down, Wagstaff.
exactly. But it's also a good reminder that we're not dealing with a heat dome Thank goodness.
Exactly. I mean, it was this time pretty much last year that we were dealing with those temperatures creeping up near 40. So I don't think we should be complaining too much, but it is a bit tough to swallow when we are seeing day after day of this very unsettled weather. Unfortunately, it is going to continue at least for another week. Temperature-wise, we are looking at about 18 in Pitt Meadows, still 17 at Vancouver Airport, and heading out into the Fraser Valley, still in the mid to high teens. So we're not going to see a big change. It's just a little bit below the seasonal average. What we've dealt with, though, today is the system coming up from across the border, and that has brought quite a bit of cloud cover at times. We did actually sneak in a bit more sunshine than we initially thought, but it has also brought very unstable weather. So we have still a severe thunderstorm watch for eastern Kootenay. So you're looking at Cranbrook, Invermere. We could see very heavy hail or rain associated with that. Overnight, we will see some showers developing. They'll continue early tomorrow morning, and then we'll actually brighten up and see some sunshine for Saturday afternoon.
Okay, we'll take it. Thank you.
You will.
Climate change is set to bring more floods and more instability. So as we move to adapt, can we right some mistakes from the past? UT Lee has some suggestions and why that might help salmon. Stick around. Hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream. Thanks for being here tonight. Grand Prix festivities have officially started their engines in Montreal. For the first time in 3 years, all the excitement, the fans, the tourists have returned. Chloe Rinaldi went to catch some of the F1 fever.
Crescent and Peel Street were buzzing today, with some taking part in Formula One activities for the very first time.
It's really cool just to walk around everybody and saw some of the racers while we're at the pit walk, so yeah, very fun.
Yeah, it's been super exciting. It's also my first international trip, so for it to be Canada is actually pretty dope.
For 9-year-old Jacob O'Leary from Newfoundland, it's also his first Formula One experience.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, epic,
It's
isn't it?
awesome.
The Grand Prix of Canada has been taking place in Montreal since 1978. And for some, the race and the festivities are an annual tradition.
It feels very great. I'm so grateful. After 3 years, it's coming back, and I'm so happy with the COVID and everything.
We went to the pit lane walk today, and I've never seen so many people for a pit lane walk. I think it's because of the drive to survive. It's made it very popular.
He's referring to the hit Netflix show that has created a surge in popularity for the sport. Meanwhile, businesses downtown are happy to once again see a surge in customers.
On a normal year, it means the biggest weekend of the year. After 2 years of pandemic, it's literally a godsend for a lot of these businesses.
For Ziggy's Pub, a Crescent Street mainstay, owner Ziggy Eichenbaum is looking forward to terraces being filled with people.
It's our gravy, the Grand Prix, and what's nice about it, it puts Montreal on the map.
After practice tomorrow and qualifiers on Saturday, the official race will take place Sunday. Chloe Rinaldi, CBC News, Montreal.
As climate change accelerates, flooding is going to become more common. So what are some of the fixes and how much will they cost? And can any good come from adaptation? Yote Lee takes a look at flood mitigation in this edition of About Here.
This is Abbotsford, British Columbia right now, as of 2022. But in November of last year, this is what Abbotsford looked like. After several days of heavy rain, much of the low-lying valley around this city was flooded, wreaking havoc and causing millions of dollars in damage. But this video isn't just about Abbotsford. This video is about a larger pattern, because what happened here is likely going to happen a lot more often. With climate change, rivers across Canada are expected to flood more often. There are many complex factors behind this, but here's a quick overview. In the case of coastal rivers, you have sea level rise from the ocean. For rivers that flow from mountains, you have snow that is melting faster and faster every year. Then you have frequent wildfires that destroy forests, leaving behind land that is much less absorbent to water. Add increasingly intense rainstorms into the mix, and you have a perfect recipe for flooding. That's what happened in Abbotsford and other parts of British Columbia last year. A month's worth of rain fell in 2 days over areas upstream that had been ravaged by wildfires in the previous summer, leading to devastating results. Floods like this are a growing concern for the many cities across Canada that are located near rivers. Places like Calgary, Ottawa, Montreal, and many, many others. So what should we do about this? Well, there's the obvious answer. Just build a wall. That always works, right? But the problem is, we've already tried that. Throughout history, humans have created walls along rivers and other water bodies to make sure that water stays out and land stays dry. One of the most common structures for this is the dike, a simple wall made by piling up dirt and rocks next to the water. You see, floods are nothing new because rivers are not naturally static bodies of water. Over the years, a river can fluctuate in speed and size and even shift direction depending on the climate. Every once in a while, those fluctuations flood the land next to the river. That might be great for a wetland or swamp, but not so great for farmland and buildings. So, over the years, humans have often built dikes and other structures to make sure the river stays its lane. And that has allowed us to build settlements right up to the water's edge. But climate change and the larger floods it brings is proving to be a real threat to these kinds of protections. You can really see that in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia. Experts predict that by the end of the 21st century, floods that we're used to seeing every 200 to 500 years will start occurring more like every 50 years. And the dikes here just wouldn't be able to handle that. A survey of dikes in the Fraser Valley found that 71% of them could fail during this kind of a flood. Fixing those dikes and building them higher comes with a huge price tag. The provincial government here estimates that it will cost $10 billion to upgrade the dikes in the Fraser Valley. $10 billion. Just let that sink in for a bit. Okay, definitely not the right choice of words. Now, I do want to mention that building dikes isn't the only solution here. In Calgary, the city is looking to build a $432 million reservoir to temporarily hold water when its river runs too high. In Ontario, the Clairville Dam holds back water to help prevent flooding in the GTA. And I think a particularly interesting example is in Winnipeg. In the 60s, the city dug out what is effectively a giant ditch called the floodway to keep the city from flooding. During heavy rains, it reroutes water from the Red River around the entire city. And this is a massive piece of infrastructure. At the time, it was the second largest earth-moving project in the world, after the Panama Canal. But at the end of the day, all these solutions share one thing in common: the extraordinary cost. And because of that, increased river floods pose a much more existential question to a lot of areas. You simply can't build a multi-billion-dollar floodway for every community impacted by climate change. And I find this to be a common narrative these days. The increase in river floods is just one of many, many stories where the impacts of a changing climate will leave us paying for insanely expensive fixes or grappling with loss. And honestly, it can often feel overwhelming or straight up depressing. But for this story, I found something that helped me look at this issue a bit differently. In the Fraser Valley, many are seeing the upcoming challenges to the dike network as an opportunity to help salmon. Yes, salmon. The Fraser River is the world's largest salmon-producing river. Each year, hundreds of thousands to millions of these fish swim up the Fraser to spawn, and their offspring then make their way down this river towards the Pacific. Along the way, they look for refuge in little streams, marshes, or sloughs to rest and grow stronger before they swim out into the ocean. But it turns out that these dikes have blocked salmon from accessing these crucial resting areas. According to the Watershed Watch Salmon Society, over 1,500 kilometers of this habitat have been blocked by dikes. Well, since so many of these dikes need to be updated anyways, many are advocating that salmon-friendly infrastructure be integrated into the upgrades. This could include gates that open up to let fish access the streams behind the dikes. It could also include fish-friendly pump stations that don't harm fish when pumping water from the stream to the river. And the salmon need all the help they can get. Salmon returns have been declining for decades. In fact, last year, the federal government closed 60% of commercial salmon fisheries because they were on the verge of collapse. This initiative really helped me see some silver linings in this issue, but it also highlighted something important. These dikes might have not been that great of an idea to begin with. Many are now recognizing that in the long term, a more sensible response to increased flooding might be to just give space for these floods to happen naturally, while moving people safely out of the way. In 2006, the Netherlands launched Room for the River, a program that involved buying out homeowners who lived close to rivers and moving their dikes further back, creating more space for river floods. A little closer to home, the state of Washington has a similar program called Floodplains by Design, which has reconnected over 7,000 acres of floodplain back to the river. These changes, of course, require very difficult conversations because it can involve some people giving up their homes. But again, it's not a complete loss. With each floodplain that's restored comes new marshes, wetlands, and creeks. Those areas offer new habitats for fish and wildlife while creating critical protections for the communities behind them. That helps me see this issue a bit differently. Climate change and increased river floods do threaten to change many of the landscapes that we've grown used to, and our knee-jerk reaction is often to preserve these places against that change, to keep things exactly the same. But in some cases, I think we could start seeing this as a bit more of an opportunity, one that invites us to re-examine our relationship to rivers in general. Or at the very least, help out some salmon. They could really use it.
Suspended indefinitely. The national chief of the Assembly of First Nations is in trouble tonight. Why Roseanne Archibald is being pushed out for now. Stick around.
On the rocky north shore of Burritt Inlet, guarding the approaches to Vancouver Harbor, there stands a lighthouse. For 80 years, the light of Point Atkinson has burned, guiding mariners safely into the great Pacific seaport. The present lighthouse was built in 1912, although the base of the station is the original structure of 1874. Ernie Daw is the fifth keeper of the station, and he's been at the job for the past 20 years, climbing the 185 steps at least a dozen times a day to tend the light and carry up supplies of coal oil. To the west lies Bowen Island, famous summer resort, but no place for a busy man today. Inside the lighthouse, the last few feet of the climb are by a vertical ladder that takes the keeper to his goal, 108 feet above the surface of the sea. Oil is used rather than electricity because a power failure, even for a short time, might have disastrous results. inside the lantern is an oil light of 500 candle power. The light from this strikes the surrounding prisms, which reflect it back to a bullseye in the center. The light coming from the bullseye is magnified to 100,000 candle power and produces a beam that can be seen 40 miles away. Every 2.5 hours, the lighthouse attendant must wind up the weight that operates the turning mechanism. Enough energy to rotate the lantern 1,500 times. During the winter, the light burns for 16 hours every night, but in summer, it's on for only half the time. As well as tending the light, Mr. Daw keeps an eye on small boats that might come to grief on the rocks. Several people owe their lives to his watchfulness. A welcome landmark to ships that pass in the night.
Major developing story we're following for you tonight. The Assembly of First Nations has suspended National Chief Roseanne Archibald after a series of complaints were made against her. Olivia Stefanovic has the latest.
The glass ceiling has been broken.
Roseanne Archibald made history 1 year ago, becoming the first woman elected to lead the Assembly of First Nations.
And we will not be silenced.
Now she's made history again as the first national chief suspended by the AFN Executive Committee. In a statement, the AFN says it is regrettable that we had to take this severe action, but we had no other choice. The national chief has committed serious breaches of her obligations to the AFN through unfounded and unsubstantiated public attacks.
Hear me, chiefs?
The AFN says it's acting now because of what Archibald said yesterday, following earlier complaints made about her. CBC News first reported on an external investigation the AFN is conducting after 4 of Archibald's staff members filed bullying and harassment complaints against her. In her statement yesterday, Archibald accused her staff members of seeking contract payouts totaling $1 million and the AFN of corruption and collusion.
The CBC's Olivia Stefanovic reporting tonight. Manitoba RCMP have now charged a 92-year-old priest in connection with alleged sexual abuse at a residential school more than 50 years ago. Arthur Moss, who lives in Winnipeg, was arrested yesterday. Police say the alleged abuse involved a 10-year-old girl. The CBC's Karen Paul has more from the site of the former school at the center of the allegations. And a warning, some people may find details in this story upsetting.
This is the site of the former Fort Alexander residential school. There's not much left, just a little bit of the stone foundation. But if you come with me over here, one of the other chilling things left, these cellar holes. Survivors tell me students were put down there when they misbehaved. Alma Mann Scott was only 5 when she was forced to attend here as a student. She was here at the same time as the priest charged yesterday.
I feel a sense of strength too from knowing that someone is being held accountable for these crimes committed upon children and should never have happened. We were fine the way we were, and we're slowly returning to it. More on the land and nature and in balance with nature. Yeah. So I prefer to look at that.
On the same site, the band office, where the chief tells me it's been a heavy couple of weeks here. Just over in this field, they've been doing ground-penetrating radar searches, and they found almost 200 anomalies already, possible unmarked graves right here by the cemetery. The chief hopes that this arrest and this charge will start to bring some healing to people on his community. Some of the people I've spoken to say there should be more. There should be more charges and more arrests, more people held accountable. But still, they feel in the end, they're just happy someone's listening to them and finally believing them. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Saugeen First Nation, Manitoba.
If you or someone you know is looking for support, you can reach the National Residential School Crisis Line at the number there, 1-866-925-4419. It operates 24 hours a day and is available to anybody who is impacted. Inflation in Canada is reaching levels not seen in decades. As we said earlier, it's beyond just gas and groceries. Rent is skyrocketing, and as Thomas Douglas shows us, it's forcing tenants across this country to make some tough choices.
Searching for an affordable home to rent can be exhausting. Factor in spiraling inflation, and the headaches are only getting worse. Just ask Kirsten Parnell.
There's thousands of people in Halifax looking for apartments right now, and they're in the same situation as me.
She had finally found a suitable one-bedroom unit in this complex until she was asked to provide the first and last month's rent. That's not allowed in Nova Scotia, but more and more renters are saying they have no other choice.
People are more desperate, so they're putting up with it in a way that they might not have before.
New figures show the price of a one-bedroom rental in Halifax shot up more than 13% in the past year. In Toronto, it's an even steeper rise, while renters in Vancouver have endured a climb near a whopping 20%. And there's no relief in sight. The listing website rentals.ca says from April to May, Canadians saw the steepest monthly rent increase in 3 years. In the country's biggest city, amid the roar of constant condo construction, renters are feeling the squeeze.
We all know none of those places are going to be affordable stock.
The federal government is rolling out a one-time housing affordability payment of $500 for low-income earners. But advocates like Marcia Stone say it's hardly enough.
What's $500 going to do? That can barely buy somebody's groceries these days.
With rising interest rates cooling Toronto's housing market, more renters are hanging on to their apartments, driving availability down and pushing prices up.
Really shooting up, and good news for landlords, but obviously bad news for tenants.
And for tenants, that steeper inflation only means more trouble ahead. Thomas Douglas, CBC News, Toronto.
The federal minister of housing was at a private home in Ottawa this morning, a home that was recently retrofitted to be more energy efficient. He was there to announce the launch of the Canada Greener Homes Loan Program.
This $4.4 billion initiative will provide interest-free loans of up to $40,000 per household to help homeowners make their homes more climate-friendly through extensive green retrofits, just like Roz and Anya just did to their home.
The loan program will work alongside the Canada Greener Homes grant. It already offers homeowners up to $5,000 to make their households more energy efficient. The federal government does want to make it tougher for violent offenders to use the defense, to not be able to use the defense of extreme intoxication. So today, as Rafi Boudjikanian reports, it introduced legislation in response to a Supreme Court ruling.
Being drunk or high is not a defense for committing criminal acts like sexual assault.
And so the federal government is acting.
So what does Bill C-28 do? It amends the criminal code so that an individual would be held responsible for the violence they commit while in a state of extreme intoxication if they ended up in that state through their own criminal negligence.
The defense of extreme intoxication has rarely been used successfully in Canadian courts, but there were a couple of recent high-profile cases. In one, the Supreme Court of Canada acquitted a Calgary man after he got high on magic mushrooms, broke into a female professor's home, and assaulted her. The court also suggested Parliament may want to enact a law to hold extremely intoxicated offenders accountable for violent crimes.
You just don't want people thinking on the one hand that they're vulnerable because if they're with someone who's drunk, they might be somehow vulnerable or more vulnerable. And on the other hand, you don't want someone to think, oh, I can have a few drinks and do whatever the blank I want.
Our concern is that it will target those who are mentally ill, those who are addicted both to alcohol and drugs.
The Criminal Lawyers Association also says it's already difficult for defendants to prove they're extremely intoxicated to the point they can't be held responsible for their actions.
You had certain groups that have their mandate, of course, and they have their people that they want to protect and make sure they're looking out for. So I think a lot of this is the government trying to appease those groups who are concerned. But again, I do question whether the level of concern is warranted.
Meanwhile, this women's legal defense group says the criminal code amendment is a step in the right direction.
It's closed that gap in circumstances where we know that women and children are among those disproportionately impacted by crimes of violence, I think is a good response.
Lametti wants the bill to pass quickly for the legal gap to be filled by the fall. Opposition parties say they'll take the time to review the legislation. Rafi Bujikani on CBC News, Ottawa.
The pandemic has taken its toll on nearly every aspect of our lives, from health to how we socialize. That's where it seems to have hit hardest for Canada's youth. As Deanna Sumanak-Johnson reports, parents and teachers are working overtime to address their social anxieties.
Like many parents, Lily Chang looked forward to her kids getting back to in-person schooling, but it was harder than she anticipated for her youngest, Frisia.
Are you okay?
Yeah. She could spend most of her kindergarten online, and friendships with other students were tricky.
Almost every week there'd be a day where she'd come home in tears, people hurt her feelings, or she would say that she spent all of recess alone, and it really tugs at your heart.
Pediatrician Dr. Saba Merchant calls it social malnutrition. She says in-person daycare and early grades are about so much more than just learning the ABCs.
They are learning about other children's perspective, their opinion on things, and that helps them develop empathy. That helps them, understand why people do certain things.
That pediatrician is encouraging parents to use the summer to start re-socializing their kids outdoors with friends, or if they deem group activity too risky, to even just have a bubble with a single friend who a child can see regularly. Schools have a role to play too. This teacher is directing a musical where different grade 3 classes, previously separated by cohorts, are able to dance and sing together. At her school, play is seen as key to healing some of the social anxieties of the pandemic.
We're reintegrating the students, and so they're able to mix more with each other. The play is so important because they're learning basic civility. How to say please and thank you, or will you be my friend?
Elliot is in grade 3.
She introduced us to different people to get us to know more people.
His classmate Riley offers this advice.
Be yourself, and if your friends don't like you the way you are or something, you just go see your other friends.
A lesson in making friends again, so important to children's mental health and confidence. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
A Black-led youth academy is launching its first location in Vancouver. They want more Black and BIPOC young people to dive into the virtual realm. You're going to hear from one very accomplished student right after this. And at 6:40, almost 3, a live look at Whistler. The snow quickly melting on the ski hills in the resort village. Perhaps a good weather for a drive up the Sea to Sky. Amy will tell us in the full weekend forecast after this.
In Borneo, there's a remarkable place that cares for hundreds of orphans a day. Orphaned orangutans. The Orangutan Foundation International's Care Center is a nursery, a hospital, and a school devoted to saving a species. Canadian primatologist Dr. Burritt started the center decades ago.
We have 300 orangutans in our care center facility, and we employ 230 people.
Here, they learn the skills they need to someday return to the wild. They start in the nursery.
We bring out 9 o'clock in the morning, and orangutan actually run here. Sometimes one orangutan is very good climbing, sometimes learn from the friend.
The older juveniles get to graduate to the next level.
There is forest school for the little orangutans, so we take them out to let them play in the forest, build a nest, and interact with the other orangutans in the same age.
When an orphan comes into a center, it's another commitment to another 10 years of caring for that orangutan, of feeding it and having caregivers for it and giving it a space to roam and learn.
So the forest is slowly being eroded, sometimes quite quickly being eroded, and the wild orangutans have no place to run, no place to hide.
Back at the center, the staff not only prepare meals, but also make enrichment packages so the babies can learn to forage.
We add some peanuts, also vitamin to them. Okay, we roll it so they can open it. And it's like a parcel.
It's with me, and she is about 5 years old. She came back, she's very tiny, so we raise her and love her, pay attention to her, give her future.
Like the baby. If you love, oh, yeah.
Amy Bell is back with a full BC forecast.
Yes.
A little steamy out there today.
It's a little sticky.
Little muggy, yeah.
It was a little muggy. We've been seeing that a lot lately.
No, it was almost shorts weather.
No, yeah.
Getting there.
Getting there. We're
I know,
definitely
yeah, a
getting
couple
there.
more days, fellas.
Yeah.
Don't show off those pale gams yet.
Make sure you're ready for it.
Yeah.
It feels like it's a long way off, but we will get into warm weather soon. I promise you. We just have to get through the next week or so, and then I think we'll see a gradual warming up. But it was quite humid today, as we've seen the last few days, and we are going to continue to see some showers this evening and overnight, early tomorrow morning. And not the warmest for tomorrow, but we will get into some sunshine. As we saw today, we'll have the system moving up from the south and still dealing, I should mention, with severe thunderstorm warnings for the eastern Kootenays. So Cranbrook, Invermere, that is still a risk this evening. It has been all day. And in fact, we will see that unsettled weather with a risk of thunderstorms tomorrow as well, and even some areas of the southern and central interior. So keep that in mind. With the thunder and lightning means we could also see some hail at times. So certainly very active, and we'll continue to see that overnight and in through tomorrow. It'll be very unsettled, so I don't want you to be scared by any of the showers that we're seeing here. Most of those will fall very early in the morning, that sort of overnight, early morning pattern, and then we'll see that later day afternoon clearing. So tomorrow's probably the best bet for your outdoor adventures, as we will see things clouding over and getting a little bit wet for Sunday at times. Port Hardy, you're looking at showers, drizzle for Prince Rupert, lovely day up in Dease Lake with a high of 19. But yes, unsettled for Prince George, Williams Lake, Kelowna, Cranbrook, that entire area dealing with that risk of thunderstorms, especially in the morning. So keep that in mind. And then for our 5-day forecast, as I mentioned, once we get through those morning showers tomorrow, we'll dry out, we'll brighten up at just a high of 17, 19 with clouds and a chance of showers on Sunday. And Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, staying cloudy, but I think we'll stay dry, and we'll gradually see that temperature beginning to rise. So by the end of next week, I think we'll finally see temperatures getting into the warmer territory.
Almost summer-like.
Let's not go crazy.
You're the boss.
All right.
Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
In their words, it's Hogwarts meets Wakanda. A Black-led local youth academy called Ethos Lab is moving into a permanent home in East Vancouver this weekend. It wants to increase access and representation among Black young people in the virtual realm. 18-year-old Yobi Davidoff is going to lead some of the camps with Ethos Lab this summer, and he joins us now. Yobi, thanks for being here. First of all, how did you get involved with Ethos?
Well, thank you, Dan, for having us. I first got involved with Ethos Lab at the end of my grade 12 year. I was really trying to make a connection to Vancouver before I went off to college. And I'm attending Harvard University, so it's not in Vancouver, but I felt that there's a lot that I still wanted to do and participate in Vancouver, and Ethos Lab was a way to connect my interest at school with computer science with a place and a community that I value deeply.
And as you mentioned, you're attending Harvard. It's not just any university, studying computer science. What did you learn from Ethos to help you prepare for university?
So I think because Ethos came in so late, I really gained mostly leadership experience. You know, Ethos Lab is a very new organization. There's a ton of opportunities to take a leadership role and sort of be a role model. And I think that helped me, carry myself when I go to Harvard, how I represent myself.
Can you tell us what sort of things or camps you're going to be teaching at Ethos?
So I'm really excited to announce that this summer we're actually starting a new game design studio in partnership with EA Electronic Arts. There's a Vancouver studio. So throughout the summer, we're going to be learning fundamental code, so it's very beginner friendly. And then we're going to apply it to an industry standard, Unity, which is an industry standard programming software for game development. And the goal is to have a couple of games that the youth have created.
Why do you think it's important that more Black students, students of color, BIPOC students get access and involvement in what we call STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math?
I think it's incredibly important. You know, a lot of the jobs that could change your outcome financially and create generational wealth are in STEM, and it's one of the lower barrier. You can use school to an education to achieve these goals, which is immensely powerful, especially when you give youth opportunities to get into these prestigious institutions, the Harvards, the UBCs, the U of Ts.
And Yobi, for someone who wants to get involved in Ethos, how can they do that?
You know, tomorrow we're actually having our big block party, huge launch party. Everyone's welcome, everyone's invited. We have Microsoft Active Replica doing some cool virtual reality, augmented reality experiences. We have a gaming contest. And for those who can't make it tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. at our Mount Pleasant location, you can go to ethoslab.ca and check us out, reach out, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Yobi Davidoff, we really appreciate your time. All the best in your adventures.
All right, thank you for having me. Take care.
Higher education has gone, to the dogs. A special graduate crosses the stage at Toronto Metropolitan University. You'll see the ceremony next.
It may officially be meteorological summer, but it's been a slow start. We had a cold winter across much of the prairies and a cooler spring thanks in part to La Nina. La Nina happens when the surface in the eastern Pacific Ocean runs colder, the opposite of El Nino, which is the warmer side. The change may be small, maybe only half a degree, but it has big impacts on weather patterns around the world. And this year could be a notable one, with a chance of a third consecutive winter of La Nina conditions.
We have 70% chances, so it's a high chances for La Nina to happen in the next month, but it will continue up to the end of the year with less odd. So, but again, they say 50 to 60, which is quite high. It's more than half.
They call it a triple dip La Nina, and though it's happened before, it is uncommon.
It's rare, yeah. So this would, if this happens this coming winter, that would be only the third since 1950. Yeah, it's a rare phenomenon.
La Nina packs more of a punch in the winter months for Canada. It generally means colder conditions in the Canadian prairies and wet weather on the west coast, and it can really deliver. The winter of 2010 to 2011 was marked by a particularly powerful La Nina. The Mount Washington Alpine Resort on Vancouver Island saw over 500 centimeters of snow by late December. Edmonton saw close to twice its normal snow between October and March, and in Saskatchewan, the thick snowpack caused flooding in the following spring. The big question that remains is, how is climate change impacting our La Ninas and El Niños? And that relationship is a little complicated. What we do know is by mid-century, we will likely see changes in our extreme precipitation and also perhaps changes in that time between El Nino and La Nina.
The average state is projected to become more like El Nino. There's no consensus between climate models on whether the variability is going to change.
So what does all of this mean for our summer in Alberta and Saskatchewan? Well, we will likely see close to normal temperatures and precipitation this summer across the prairies, but if La Nina holds into the winter, it could be another cold one. Christy Kleinman-Haga, CBC News, Edmonton.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. CBC Vancouver is a proud returning media partner of the Talking Stick Festival, June 12th to July 3rd. Enjoy and explore Indigenous culture through art, dance, theater, film, and more. Get tickets at fullcircle.ca and celebrate summer with Corleone at Pop Capella on June 25th. Come and enjoy high-impact harmonies and your favorite hits by pop legends. Learn more at corleone.org.
For the latest on food and fashion and cool events and what's happening around town here, CBC's Our Vancouver is the place for you. You can catch it tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and Sunday at noon right here on CBC Television. This week, Leanne Young is talking and tasting summer eats, especially barbecue, ahead of Father's Day.
It really just is for anyone that needs a helping hand at dinner time or even during the day. We have beautiful sort of like work from home lunches with salads with full protein, as well as some really nice like baked goods and breakfast parfaits that you can just grab out of the fridge on your way to the office. The ribs, we cook them for 3 hours and then we ship them to you. And all you have to do is just flash them on your grill or in the oven just to warm them up. And then you have a beautiful rib meal that you...
That's CBC Vancouver. Catch it tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and Sunday at noon on CBC TV. Now I want some ribs. Toronto Metropolitan University held its first in-person graduation ceremony since the start of the pandemic. And it featured one very lucky student. A corgi named Bao Bao appeared on stage with its parents as they accepted their diplomas.
I was shy before and was very afraid to communicate with people. And when I first time come to downtown and I even don't have any friends, and Bao Bao make me like adapt to the university life well. And even if I fail the course or
have some sad moment.
Because I bring him to school since he was 6 months old. So many people met him before.
And
the professor know him too. And
professor always invite Bao Bao to
come
class.
to the class. He came to school like almost every day with us. He's 4 years old. And sometimes in the final exam, I will bring Bao Bao to the exam room as well. And many people feel stressful. And when they see Bao Bao, and they will feel more comfortable. And he will always support me and stay with me, and even like go to library to study with me too. I think it's very important to me because I think it represents a perfect ending for my 4 years life. Because as I said, he went to his whole 4 years study. So I think he's a perfect student and is qualified to be graduated here.
Good dog. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch our program on CBC Gem, the free app, as well as on our website, cbc.ca/BC. Isabel Regam will have your late local news tonight at 11, right after the National. So good night, enjoy the weekend, stay safe.